In this video, we're going to do a quick review of ratio, rate, proportion, and percent because it might have been a while since you've done that, and it will really help you in the probability and statistics as well as the problem solving lessons. You'll get more details on certain things in the problem solving, especially like relative percent, increase, decrease, those kind of things. But I just want to go through some basics and count that as part of your video work. There's not really much to read for this one. I'll post some extra notes if you want, or something from another textbook, but this is kind of supplemental review. So here we have write each ratio in simplest form. We have 1.5 miles to 3.6 miles. So ratios, you do want to get rid of the units because they will have the same units, where rates have different units. So we want to differentiate that. So first I'm going to write it just as a fraction. So that's what that 2 means. So 1.5 miles over 3.6 miles. And you can reduce out the miles, but you also want to shift that decimal. You don't want to have decimals and fractions mixed together. That would not be simplest form. So I'm going to move that decimal over and write this as 15 over 36. And then from there, I want to reduce if possible. So try to do that yourself in a little fractions review. We had some at the beginning of the course too. Also, just keep in mind, this might all be review for you. It might be super quick, so you can just go through and try any, pause the video, try them, and then kind of skip up and see what the answers are. I'll try to at the very end remember to just do like a showing of, make sure I'll scroll back and show what the answers were for you if you're doing them sort of more like classwork. So we have 15 over 36. We have a common factor of 3, so we would divide top and bottom by 3 over 3, and we would get 5/12 as our answer. And that would be simplest form. Now you can just put this into your calculator and get an answer using your fraction key, but I want you to know how to do it quickly with just using your division, and just simplify and understand the concept here of what I mean by simplify. Now also, if you wanted to do it just plugging in the 1.5 over 3.6 using your fraction key, you should get 5/12 directly. So that's okay in this course to use your technology, but I want to show you why that's coming out that way. And you might need to click that the double arrow that's above the enter key on your calculator to go back and forth from decimal to fraction. That works out really well too. So maybe you could try B as a classwork. So it'll be an example. Before you go through and do this though, I want to point out, although these on the face of it don't have the same units, they actually do. They're weeks and days, but I can convert weeks to days. So that's the first thing you have to figure out, is how many days is that, okay? And then write that up here and convert the 2 weeks first, and then go from there. Okay, so your answer for that is 7/2. And again, with the ratios, you don't want to have the units still in there. That wouldn't be fully simplified because we're filtering that out. We have the same units, or we convert to have the same units. Now with rates, as I'm looking at number 2, we're going to write it as a fraction in lowest terms. We do need to keep the units because they're different from one another, and they can't be merged together and or converted or anything like that. So we have 8 cups. We don't know, there's no context with this, but it might be someone is drinking 8 cups of water every 10 minutes. That would be a lot of water. or pouring or something like that. So we're going to see if we can, reduce that to lowest terms. So we would just write it as 8 cups over 10 minutes. Can abbreviate and just leave the units there on this one, but you can reduce the 8 with the 10. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So I would have 4 cups per, write the word per, or you could put a line for division, 5 minutes. Now, I specifically said write it as a fraction in lowest terms. I did not say write it as a unit rate. That's different. That's when you're going to have 1 as a denominator. It's per 1 unit, but this one's a little bit different setup. So if that comes up, to keep it not as a unit rate, because otherwise we would end up getting a decimal. A lot of times we want that, but in some cases we don't, especially if we wanted whole cups. Like on this one, say the word problem said, I want to, have it in an exact answer with whole cups and whole minutes. This is the method you would use. For B, this is $50 for 15 dolls. Okay, so this one I want as a reduced fraction in lowest terms, not as a unit fraction. So go ahead and try that one on your own. Just pause for a second. So on this one, again, just write it as a fraction first. Okay, and then you're going to reduce. So I'm dividing by 5 over 5, and I get $10 for 3 dolls. Okay, so for this first one, we have a unit rate because we have 2 different units. We know that it's a rate. We would could write it as a fraction first, but for these, really, all I need to do is just divide, and you can do that on a calculator because I always want it per 1 gallon on these. Or for this particular question, it's asking about gallons. So I would want it as a unit rate. So I'm going to do 112 divided by 4. And then it comes out to be 28. And then it would be miles per gallon. And that's pretty typical for this. Once in a while, you might be asked to write that differently, but it's pretty typical that that's going to be as a unit rate. For B, you can try that one on your own if you want, but we have $850 for 4 nights of lodging. So again, just go ahead and keep the units on there with it, and then divide out the 850 divided by the 4. And you would get your answer of $212.50 per night. Make sure you have your dollar symbol there as well. For number 4, if your monthly internet bill is $45.60 per month, how much will it cost for the entire year? So this one is just kind of figuring out a per month versus a per year, and we could set up what's called a proportion. We could just write this out as it's going to cost me $45.60 per month per 1 month. We could do a proportion, or we could just know that we have 12 months in a year. So, we can do it that way too, using unit analysis that you've had. But let's just say we didn't know that. We would just say X dollars for 12 months, 1 year, right? And then what we would do is cross multiply. So it comes out to be X equals 12 times $45.60. which is what you could just know in your head to do, and that's fine also. I just want to show you the method of cross multiplying with a proportion. We want to have our units the same, so notice I have dollars in the numerator and then the months in the bottom. Okay, so this is my monthly bill right here, and this is my yearly bill. And so when I go ahead and multiply that out, I get $547.20 per year. So make sure you write that as well. You could try number 5 as a classwork and just pause the video and see what you get, and then come back and check with me, or you can just wait and go through it with me. Okay, so number 5 you can do as a classwork or just do it with me. If you want to do it on your own, just pause it. So we have red and blue ceramic tiles are laid out according to a pattern. So for every 17 tiles used, we have 8 blue tiles. Okay, and that would give us our total tiles laid in that fashion. So that's 25 total tiles. If we have 375 tiles all together, how many are blue? So I'm going to say blue over total. That's going to be how I'm going to set up my proportion. So I would have, if I have 8 blue tiles for every 25 total tiles, right? Then I would have X blue tiles for every 375 tiles. So the red was given to us so we could figure out how many total tiles, we're putting down compared to that 8 blue. So now we can cross multiply like we did earlier, which means I'm just going to multiply across the equals on the diagonal. There's a little property that in math that tells us this can be done. You should have had that at some point in your math career, I'm sure. So we would have AD equals BC right there. So this is just a little note to remember about. So now you're going to have the 25X, and I'm not going to put the labels in the equation here. Then we would have 25x equals 8 times 375. And then divide both sides by 25. And I get 120 blue tiles total. Okay, so this came out to be, this 8 times 375 is pretty big, like 3,000. So if you didn't divide by the 25, you see there was a problem. And you can now tell, like, well, 120 out of 375, that seems proportional. That makes sense. It's not bigger than what I, have total. That would be a red flag. Okay, so for number 6, if 3 out of 5 people like chocolate ice cream in a crowd of 75 people, how many would you expect to like chocolate ice cream? So again, we have the 3 out of 5 is the total, the 5 is the total of who's surveyed, but then we have the whole crowd is 75 people. So we can use this information to help us out. So if we know 3 of 5 compared to x over 75, that's going to be our proportion, and we would have 5x equals 3 times 75 divided by 5 on both sides. You could use a calculator for this if you want, but 5 into 75 would be 15. And then 3 times 15 is going to give us 45. So then you would write a sentence, 45 people probably like chocolate. Okay, this is a brief sentence just to bring it together. Again, you can pause and do these on your own if you want. A cookie recipe calls for 1.5 cups of flour for every 3/4 cup of sugar. How many cups of sugar are needed if 2.5 cups of flour are used? So we would do 1.5 of flour to sugar is what the recipe calls for. And then what my reality is 2.5 cups in the numerator of flour in the numerator over the sugar, which I'm trying to find, right? So maybe I should write my let x equal cups sugar. Okay, so then I would again do the cross multiplying. So I would have 1.5 x, which I'm going to write as 3/2 x, equals 3/4 times 2.5, which I'll write as 5/2. So I have fractions that I'm dealing with. And I'm going to simplify. So I have 15 over 8 on that right-hand side. And now I would multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. So it may have been a while since you've done this type of thing, so I just wanted to review it before we have to work with it within a word problem or something. So now on this side I can reduce. So I end up with 5/4 for my x. And we probably want to write that as a mixed number because we started working with mixed numbers. So I know I should have less than the flour, right? Or else it's going to be pretty sweet. And this would be cups of flour and sugar. Sorry. So if you forget, then you know you marked it over here. So cups sugar. Okay, so there we have our sentence as well. Nice October colors there. Okay, so for number 8, I'm going to leave that for you to do as a classwork, but I'm going to give you this hint here. For unit price, you want dollar over quantity, because in the store, we're usually saying how much is it per 1 unit, not, you know, how many units do I get for $1? I guess unless you're at the dollar store. So go ahead and try to work those out, figure out your unit price, and then say what's the better deal. And I'll just take out this typo here. Pain cereal, I don't know what that is, but I must have been writing mixing and matching. That's probably pain medication or cereal or something. So just ignore that. So when we make these calculations, we get the first box is 19 cents per ounce and the other one is 23 cents per ounce. Because sometimes they try to say, well, you buy more, buy in bulk and you're going to get a better deal. But this one is actually lower, the first one. So that would be the better deal. Okay. One thing to be careful of, notice I wrote VS meaning versus, because this isn't a proportion like up here. We weren't trying to do any solving of anything. We're just crunching the numbers, you know, the unit price versus unit price, right? Of, you know, A versus B. All right, so just be careful of that. So that this is your formula here for unit price. The dollars over quantity, and just use a calculator, divide the top number by the bottom number, and get your per unit value, okay? I'm going to do the next pages in a separate video so it doesn't get too long. So thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I'll work out the other ones shortly.